Hello and welcome to Birth Time, the podcast. Following the success of our world-renowned and international award-winning film, Birth Time, the documentary, we are coming back together to explore a wide variety of topics around pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. As a way of exploring topics in great depth, we will be covering one topic over several episodes, bringing you up-to-date evidence-based information from academics, practitioners, and birth workers, as well as stories and lived experiences from birthing women and people and their families. We will also have interludes with people we interviewed in Birth Time the documentary, finding out where life has taken them since the creation of the film. Join your hosts, home birth midwife Jo Hunter, doula and birth photographer Jerusha Sutton, and producer and shamanic practitioner Zoe Naylor, as we delve deep into the world of growing and birthing babies. Hi, and welcome back to Birth Time, the podcast. It's so lovely to have you here. We've had a few weeks off. Now, you've got a few of us here today. I'm Jerusha. We've got Jo here. Hi, Jojo.
Hello.
And we've got Zoe joining us.
Hello.
This is our interlude episode. We recently finished our Who Defines Risk series, and we've had a few weeks off because we've had a few adventures, haven't we? Jo and I have been to the Home Birth Australia conference, which Jo presented at and I emceed, so that was a pretty incredible adventure. And then the three of us, Jo, Zoe and I, have recently been on a little road trip down to the south coast of New South Wales, Ewan country, to go and visit our beautiful friends at Waminda. We spent a couple of days interviewing Mel Briggs and some of her team on the development of what is happening down there with their incredible birth centre and the development thereof. And it's a pretty exciting new project for us, which we just announced last week that we will be following the development of their birth centre, which will change everything, we think. We came back absolutely blown away by what they are achieving down there. Anyway, there will be more on that soon. So today's interlude episode, which we are doing between series, each interlude we are getting back a guest that we had on our film because we just want to play catch-ups with everyone, right? And so this interlude, we've got the incredible Debra Pascali-Bonaro joining us. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Debra if you don't already know. Debra Pascali-Bonaro is a globally renowned speaker, filmmaker, author, doula trainer, and host of the Orgasmic Birth podcast, where she breaks barriers and explores love, intimacy, and pleasure in birth and parenting. Debra is a mother, a grandmother, and a sought-after expert featured in parenting publications and media outlets worldwide. She serves as co-chair of the International Childbirth Initiative and chair of the International Mother-Baby Childbirth Initiative, advocating for safe, respectful maternity care. A Lamaze International Childbirth Educator and Donor International Birth and Postpartum Doula Trainer, Debra directed the award-winning documentary Orgasmic Birth, The Best Kept Secret, and co-authored the book Orgasmic Birth, Your Guide to a Safe, Satisfying and Pleasurable Birth. She also, as if that all isn't enough, she also leads the transformative Eat Pray Doula Retreats in Bali each year with Midwife Robin Lim, inspiring doulas, midwives and birth professionals worldwide to support and embrace the power of birth. Debra, what a delight it is to have you join us here today. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Jerusha, for that, having me here, for the beautiful intro, and being here with you, Jo and Zoe. My heart is just truly exploding. I was so excited to see you all again.
What a delight.
Debra, I think the last time that we actually were in a room together, and the four of us chatted, it was about 7 years ago now, which was when we were doing our filming for Birth Time. And we interviewed you for the documentary. And you're absolutely stunning and, may I say, improvised monologue ended our documentary so beautifully. So we couldn't believe how long you spoke, and it just kept going, and we couldn't cut any of it because it was all perfect.
It summed everything up. It was magnificent.
It really did. So as Rue mentioned before, as part of our relatively new podcast, we're doing some interesting interludes with people that were in the film and just catching up and seeing where they're at, and maybe even doing a little bit more of a deep dive into your experiences in the birth world. Obviously, in a documentary, we can only put a couple of minutes of each person. So this is a nice way to actually see what you're up to and where life has taken you in the last 7 years since we last spoke. You're such a key figure in the birth community internationally, and you've worked tirelessly to support women and families, and particularly through your work with Orgasmic Birth and doula training. So we'd love to chat to you a little bit more about your wisdom and your passion for birth work, and where it all began, really, and also into the future and where it's taking you and all of us. So maybe could we start a little bit from your own personal journey? What led you to become so passionate about birth work and advocacy?
Yeah. I love that question, Joe. And before I will say that, but I have to tell you this, when we met all those years ago, it was a very hot day, right? I remember just sweating and so excited to be with you. And I also just had taught all day long. And when I was then invited to speak with you, I thought, I don't even have time to do my hair or put some makeup on. And when I look at the film now, I think, oh my goodness, I wish I took a shower and had a shower. So I just have to share. That's my reflection back. But I'm so honored to be a part, and that I was able to share really from my heart and my feelings, and that could really sum up and be the end of the film. But I credit that, and this is how it flows to the question, is really my passion for birth. I started when I was a very little girl, and I was lucky enough to be little and have my mother, my grandmother, my great grandmother, lots of aunties, and a lot of women in my family. And when I was little, my great grandmother was in her late 80s. And, when you're a little girl, I never pictured her young. I could only see this older woman. She was from Italy. She was a little bit short and quite round. And she would kind of get up very slowly and waddle around. But when I would ask her about her births, she had 8 children at home. And she would light up. Like the rest, she was kind of monotone and didn't talk about a lot of things. But when I asked her birth, it was like, wow. And she talked about walking and moving and digging in the earth. And she would waddle over to the kitchen sink and lean over and tip her head back and actually role play that she was giving birth. And that's where she gave birth, leaning over the kitchen sink. And the midwife would often catch, but the last babies came so quick. My grandmother, the oldest daughter, caught the baby. Now, when I'm young, my grandmother already seemed slightly old to me. And I thought if these 2 older women could lean over the sink and one could catch the baby, what was the big deal in birth? So their stories really set me out on a path because they talked about challenge, they talked about work, but they never talked about fear or pain. And when she kind of role played and reached down for that imaginary baby and brought it up, oh my goodness, the love, the joy, she was giving birth at that moment in her late 80s. I never envisioned her as a woman in her 20s giving birth. So she gave me the confidence that when you fast forward and it was my time, I wanted what she had. And yet already the medical system had taken over and people wanted to put me down physically and emotionally. And I wasn't going to have it. And here I also was a very young woman. And I was kind of interviewing providers, which they didn't like that idea. They thought I should just come in, lay down, and they should check me. And I was like, no. I have a series of questions. And so I really had to advocate for having the birth that I wanted, which was really the birth that everybody else in my family had. So I was shocked that things had changed so much that those opportunities weren't there for me. And I ended up having a really powerful, gentle birth, kind of despite the system. I ended up finding a resident, and it's a funny story because I was a student at McGill University in Montreal, and I couldn't find a doctor in Montreal that would let me do birth my way. I mean, they were saying things to me like, honey, we'll take care of you. Just trust us. And I was like, sorry, I'm out of here. Well, I couldn't find a doctor. So I went to the McGill Med School. I went in at lunchtime and I yelled out, is there anybody here who hasn't seen a birth yet? And they all laughed at me and said, you mean someone with birth experience? And I said, no, because all of you are being indoctrinated into a broken system. And I want someone that hasn't given birth yet or seen a birth yet. And so this very young resident came up and we kind of laughed and he said, but I think they're right. And I said, no, no, no. I trust that if you haven't seen a birth yet, we can do this together because I haven't given birth yet. But I really want to know that we can honor and respect each other. And he was amazing to really listen to my stories, to know what I wanted. And he was willing to go up against a system that didn't want me to do the things that my grandmother and great-grandmother and mother had done. So with his support, I had a really wonderful birth. I was the first upright birth in the hospital I gave birth in ever. I was the first birth without an episiotomy in the hospital because I made a deal with him. If you don't cut me, I won't cut you. And he was like, and I was like, I'm serious. The way you feel about your penis is how I feel about my yoni and my perineum. And I trust that if the creator made your penis able to change size multiple times in a day, that my perineum is equally flexible and will birth my babe just fine. So we had a lot of fun things and a lot of people came in the room because they wanted to see this woman that they actually said was birthing like a monkey because I was upright in a squat. And that experience brought me to realize that so many people don't have the stories. So many people don't know how their great-grandmother or grandmother or even their own coming into the world is. And that set me on my path to become a childbirth educator. And before long, I was getting invited to all these births and I figured out, oh my goodness, someone told me one day there's a doula. And I was like, I must be a doula because I'm going to all these births and smiling and holding hands. And then I was a part of the very beginning of the doula movement. I was at the very first meeting of DONA International. I ended up working with our dear founders, Dr. Marshall Klaus, Dr. John Kennel, Penny Simpkin. They've all passed on now. Dear ancestors, always in my heart. Phyllis Klaus and Annie Kennedy are still with us, but I ended up able to be part of some of the doula studies, started training doulas all over the world. And what I really saw in all the births that I was at is that there was love and joy and ecstasy, and there was challenge, sometimes pain. There were many, many words, but we were only giving voice to the pain and the fear, and we weren't giving voice to the possibilities and the pleasure and the joy and the love. And that's really what took me to take a deep dive in orgasmic birth, because I believe my great-grandmother had an orgasmic birth. I really think the seed for everything that I've done really came from the stories I had as a little girl.
What an amazing gift to that physician too. So that was his first birth as well, was it? Wow.
It was.
What a fabulous start to his career.
Totally. We changed each other's lives because, I mean, how could we not, right? He changed mine because he honored and respected me and really learned how to be supportive. But he went on. Midwifery at the time in Canada was still illegal. And when it became legal, he started backing up the home birth midwives, and he started doing some backup work as a physician, even in more rural areas. So I know that we were each came together for a reason. And it's been beautiful to watch both our lives kind of go in the different directions, but in really supporting birth in different ways.
Amazing. Amazing.
Hey there, Zoe Naylor here from the Birth Time team. Have you seen Birth Time, the documentary yet? Having taken home over 22 international awards, this film explores what it would take for all women to emerge from their births physically well and emotionally safe. This film is more relevant now than ever. Just head to birthtime.world and you can stream it directly to any screen or device for just $14.99 Australian dollars. Now it's back to the podcast.
So talking about orgasmic birth, obviously you've got the film Orgasmic Birth. And I remember when we were interviewing you in Sydney, we were picking your brains about, filmmaking and how to distribute it. And you were so forthgiving and lovely and generous with your experiences around that with us. And so thank you, because that really did help us at the time. But if my memory serves me right, you were telling us a story about, and I think it was like a film festival or a forum or something or other that you were showing the film in New York, but it had a different name. It wasn't called Orgasmic Birth. The film was called something else. I remember what it was called, but I want you to, if you would like to share that story with our listeners, because it's a good one.
Oh, I'd be happy to. So we weren't out in the public yet, right? We were doing our final edits and we got invited to this wonderful event where the heads of some of the major networks were there, HBO and Netflix and a lot of them. And it was what was called like a pitch session, right? To get feedback, and potentially they might have picked up projects. So my film initially, and I'm almost embarrassed, but I can smile now. The original working title was An Ordinary Miracle, Global Models of Care. And like, I know right now, like, oh my goodness, what was I thinking, right? Like that would have just been nowhere. But anyway, I go into this session and we're supposed to have 10 minutes to get up and give our overview. And I stand up and say, they asked for your title, An Ordinary Miracle, Global Models of Care. And they said, you can sit down. And I was like, where's my 10 minutes? And they said, with a title like that, we don't need to have any more. That film's going nowhere. Just sit down. And so my second kind of working title, I hadn't really played with it a lot, but a little, was Ecstatic Birth. So I quickly yelled out Ecstatic Birth. And the head of HBO looked at me and said, like, you obviously don't know what you're doing as a filmmaker. That's a terrible title too. I don't need to have any more. Just sit down. So I'm starting to go down and feeling like heartbroken because we've done so much work at this point, and to be told like nobody's going to watch it. And luckily that day I had taught a workshop and I had talked about orgasmic birth. And when I was coming to this event, one of the women at the end of the day said, where are you going? Because I was rushing out. And at that time we didn't have Uber. So I was going to hail a cab in the streets of New York. And I said, I have to go to this pitch session. She said, I'm a filmmaker. Can someone come with you? And I said, yes, I have one extra ticket. Come. So she was like my film doula because I was so nervous. And as I started to sit down, she hit me and said, yell out orgasmic birth. And I remember looking at her going, no. And she said, what do you have to lose at this point, right? So I jump back up. Now the whole auditorium is laughing at me because I'm obviously, really persistent. And I yell out orgasmic birth. And with that, the head of HBO said, now tell me, is that possible? I not only had my 10 minutes, the entire room was mesmerized. So many people came up to me after, and it really let me know that I needed to be bold. But the even better part of that is I leave that, right? I walk outside and I call my husband. And I have to say, honey, I have a new title for my film. And he says, what is it? And I said, Orgasmic Birth. And I hear silence. And then he takes a breath, and I'll never forget. He said, are you ready to be that bold? And I said, yes, I am. And he said, then I'm ready to stand with you. And I just thought, yes, we've got a new title. And thank goodness we did, because An Ordinary Miracle, I don't think I'd be here today. Our film would be in a draw somewhere.
Wow. And is it still being shown, Debra? Is it still relevant? Are people still watching it?
Yeah. I mean, the amazing thing is we have a new audience every 9 months, and even, new people that are coming into birth, doulas and educators. Actually, we're showing more now every day than we did originally.
Wow.
Our streaming is really busy all the time.
How many years ago was it that you made it?
So we started filming in 2005. I finished filming in 2008, and we released the very end of 2008. So really it was 2009 that we kind of made our splash. So a lot of years ago, but still very, very relevant.
Why do you think that is?
I think because one, Orgasmic Birth is a title that kind of provokes you to be curious. I would say half the people come to us because they're excited to consider that birth can be pleasurable and a part of our intimate life. And I would say equally, half the people come because they're like, what is this woman talking about? How could this be possible? I have to see this. She's got to be like, I don't know, crazy, right? But either way you come in, it drives people to the curiosity. And I think now more and more, it's become a movement. I think we went from being an outlier with language and an approach that was really not embraced by mainstream, but there's a lot of science now. I have tons of scientific articles that are supporting pleasure, supporting orgasmic birth, supporting that this is a really important approach for people to consider. So I think that we've swung from the edges to not quite mainstream, but I think we're almost there. And so we're getting a much broader audience today than ever.
Mm. How do you respond to the skeptics, those that just don't even buy into the idea that birth can be pleasurable? What sort of responses do you have for them?
Well, first of all, I always say watch the film, because I think until you see it and go on a journey that, as you know, your documentary does that too, takes us along to see what are the problems with the current system and what is a pleasurable, joyful, loving birth. I find people that see the film come along really easily. Then the discussion we can have after is quite different. The people that just see the two words, orgasmic and birth, and immediately just go, whoa, I can't put this together, because we have so many taboos around sexuality, and we have quite a few taboos and, beliefs that don't always serve us around birth. So these two words really do, for many people, cause this explosion. So if they haven't seen the film, it's a lot harder to kind of talk with people, but I still love to give it the challenge and ask people. One of my questions to someone who's uncomfortable with joy, love, and pleasure in birth is, why are they comfortable with pain? Why have we made a pain paradigm the norm? And that's what we can all feel comfortable with. Why is pleasure pushing your buttons? So I love to have deep dives into what the taboos are and what's holding you back from seeing a different opportunity in birth, especially if I can provide you with the science that it's a safer birth.
What are some of the buttons that people tell you, that why are they in the paradigm of pain? Do you hear lots of different stories around that?
I do. And an interesting one. And, we've had students that have done their master's thesis on analyzing the comments that we get from all the different articles and blogs and that. And when I first read the first thesis, I was pretty shocked, because they analyzed all those negative ones of what were the things that why people didn't want to think other than pain. And what was interesting is the predominant negative comments at the time were coming from young men between 25 and 40. And one of the most common themes was they did not want to think that they would have given their mother any pleasure. And I thought, that's oh my goodness, like that totally was not where my head was going with where there was going to be pushback, right? And so I went on a radio show shortly after that. That was pretty much, it was an M&M, like common radio station of mostly men. And they asked me if I'd come on to address that, and they were going to have men calling in. And I said, please, I want to hear their answers of why they're more comfortable knowing they gave their mother great pain. And if there was an opportunity that birth could have been more joyful, that was somehow bothering them. And they thought they were going to have me on for 10 minutes. They couldn't get me off. The call-ins were going for forever. I ended up on longer than any other guest. And what was interesting is in the end, several people who had been listening, called in and said, you're making a great point. And I really do need to reevaluate that it's not, they weren't giving their mother pleasure in a sexual way, right? They were just facilitating a gentler, easier birth when their mother had the ability to move and connect. And it was really a more loving birth. And when we put it into the terms of this was a connection of love, that hormone oxytocin just really peaking with common connection, and that oxytocin and beta endorphin were designed to give your mother a birth where she would feel more joy, more love, more ecstasy. They started to come around. But it was definitely a fun episode for me to be a part of and really listen. So that's probably one of the strongest that we've had.
Extraordinary. Wow. Gosh, I wouldn't have even thought of that as a concept, that young men would be even thinking that. That's extraordinary. Wow. Yeah.
I was surprised.
Yeah. It is surprising. I think I just looked at all of our faces when you said it. We were all yeah. Okay, so let's just change up a little bit now and talk about you speak a lot about the importance of creating a supportive and calm birth environment. So for women and birthing people that are listening that might be heading into their births, what are your top tips for an ideal birth environment?
I love that. Well, I think that old saying, Ina May Gaskin said it well years ago, the right place to give birth is the right place to make love. So I think really evaluating, and I always say, go and visit. I mean, if you're birthing at home, hopefully that is a good place for you to have great sex and be intimate. But if you're birthing at a birth center or a hospital, really go take a tour and look at that space and say, if I was going to show up here tomorrow night and I wanted to have really good sex, either alone or with a partner, what would I need to change? And so for most people, the lighting is a big one, right? We don't often want to make love with bright lights. So whether that's bringing in electric candles or dimming the lights or sparkly lights that can go around. But I say that birth is sensuous. All our senses are heightened. So what we see, what we hear, what we smell, what we taste, and then what we feel on our skin, our biggest organ. So if we can really frame that space with that, what do you want to see? What kind of lighting? What do you want to hear? And have a range of set lists. I love to say to partners all the time that they get to DJ the birth. And I always ask partners to have a range of different music, from the real zen or quiet. It might even be just white noise, a sound box or a rainforest or a waterfall, or it might be an artist or a genre that creates that very mellow, meditative. But then I always say, surprise them with a set list of love songs, because labor is all about love. It's about loving yourself, loving your baby. If you have a partner, loving each other. The more you love through labor, the easier and gentler labor will often be. So put that surprise love set together. And then at some point in labor, perfect time to put it on and do some romantic dancing or kissing or touching. And the next one is dance that baby into the world. We've got to get those hips and everything, that shake that booty down, right? So I love for partners to get that dance set really going. Then I always say, what are you going to push your baby out to? Sometimes I have drum music or things that people need to get up so they can really get back into their body because labor has taken them into that altered state of consciousness with that amazing hormonal flow. And the last one for me is, what song will you sing your baby into the world to? So really having a song of welcome. So that's what you hear, what you smell. There's so many smells, and we all know how in pregnancy smell is really heightened. And so for all those people that are going to hospital, just smelling a hospital, think about that. What does that do for your body? So try to bring in smells that are going to give you that safe, sensuous, sexy feeling so you can change that smell too. And hopefully you're eating and drinking. Science does really support. We need to eat and drink in labor. And so having things that we can taste that also turn us on. And if touch is safe, communicating to your team, where is touch safe, where it's not, let them know as well. How do you like to be touched? And for partners, what kind of touch turns her on? I always say to partners, hopefully you better know better than anybody all those turn-ons so that you can help not only the ambiance, the environment to be sensuous, but the words and the way that we're supported also should bring on that sensuality.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so let's talk about cultural shifts. So obviously we're in a place now where the medicalization of birth is just increasing. Our cesarean section rates going up, our forceps and episiotomy and vacuum rates are going up, our induction rates are going up. So what do you think is necessary to change the way society views and approaches birth so that the culture can shift?
Yeah. And I have to say, even though I know it and I'm living it too, when I hear you put it like that, oh my goodness, right? We just say everybody needs to care. We all need to be waking up to the fact that we're overusing valuable technology that can be life-saving in the right space. But the overuse is really creating harm for people physically and emotionally with all the birth trauma they're experiencing. So I think one of the first things that should be done, I really believe we need education about pregnancy, labor, and birth in high school. I think if we started educating people at a young age so this good information was available and address the fear. So much is fear, and rightfully so, because the stories out there can be so traumatic. But if we can help people really see the good stories, right? Really know what's possible in birth. Then when they would get pregnant, they wouldn't shy away from it. They'd want to know more. So I think we need more education. We need information. The old saying, information is power, really is. And I think if all consumers knew what's at stake for themselves, their baby, not only on this day, but as you know, the way you give birth changes how you feel about your body. It changes how you feel about yourself. It's a day that every person could be empowered to find their deepest power, not only in parenting, but to take into everything else they do. So first, we've got to get everyone riled up. And I don't care if you're young or if you're old, we should all be helping to educate. This is my little thing that I keep dreaming. Wouldn't it be great if everywhere around the world, every Tuesday morning at 10 o'clock in some coffee shop or tea shop or someplace in every community, we told birth stories? If we brought birth stories front and center and people could come out and tell those beautiful stories, tell challenging stories, but tell us, what would you do different? What did you learn from it? What could you birth forward to others? So I think part of the answer is consumers, is really all birthing people and partners. But I also think we also need to change education for our nurses, our doctors, and our midwives. They are good people that are being institutionalized into a broken system. And so I think if we can give them the education in a way that honors and respects them and respects birth, we can change the system. Because I see so many of our providers want to do different, but they really don't know how. Just like when I walked into that cafeteria and said, I don't want any of you that have already seen a birth, because you've already been indoctrinated into a broken model. It's not their fault. It's just what they know. So I think education at both ends of the spectrum are really needed right now.
Yep, definitely. Definitely. So, in terms, what do you do for work right now? Do you still attend births, Debra? Are you more doing education? Where's your focus?
So I kind of always say a mix of things. I do a few births a year, usually more now for friends and family and some special clients along the way. I'm doing a lot with education. I teach doulas all over the world, both in the US and in many other countries. And as you heard in my bio, right? I spend a lot of time with the International Childbirth Initiative because we are 12 evidence-based steps that really takes the framework of human rights and respectful care and positive, equitable birth with all the science and is a perfect template for providers that want to make change. So we're seeing midwives at home are already really doing it, so they can join because they've got it down. Birth centers and birth homes are doing it too. That's their model of care. But we have now 35 countries with many facilities that are starting to really make the change. And I put a lot of time there because I am so excited to see facilities ready to really say, we've done the best with what we knew at the time, but we now are learning better and we need to redo our policies and our practices.
Absolutely.
So can you just tell us how the initiative works, Debra? So you've got 12 steps and you take these out to different facilities around the world to help them improve their care. Is that the bottom line of how that works?
Correct. And what's really unique about it, and you may have heard of the Baby Friendly Hospital Initiative, which is kind of like a companion, right? But that's really about feeding the baby. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with the person giving birth. And I've always said, wait a second, we have to take good care of the person giving birth, right? That woman, that birthing person, before they're ready to really care for the baby. But one of the things that the hospital initiative does is it's a top down. Outside evaluators come in, hospitals kind of really clean everything up for a few days. They get a plaque that they're baby friendly. And at least for me as a doula, I go into those facilities, see the plaque, but I don't see the model of care. Because once that person leaves, they go back to their old kind of habits, right? Bad habits are hard to break.
Right.
What ours is different is you get together with both all your providers and women that have given birth there, organizations from the community, and you form a committee. And it's not hierarchical. You can't put the chief of OB as the head of the committee. It has to be a collaborative committee that everyone takes responsibility for. And they do an assessment of where are you in relationship to the 12 steps. And there's no blame and shame. Some facilities don't do any of them well. That's where we are today. We're not following the evidence. People haven't been trained in good practices. So they make a decision internally. What step do you want to start with? One step at a time. And with either support from their community of people, because there always are. There's probably a midwife nearby that could come teach. There are other people locally that can support them. Or if not, we do kind of virtually pull sites together and help one site, help another site. So basically they start making an improvement, but all the evaluation is local. They get to determine when they've done a really good job on that step and what's the next step. And this committee meets quarterly. And so it goes on and on. You know, whether one person comes or goes or retires, the initiative keeps going because it's a really good collaborative model. And what we're seeing is not only is it making a difference for the providers, they're happier when they work in a positive environment, but the births and the people birthing there are much more satisfied.
Extraordinary. And is that just in America, or is that all over? Is it international?
It's international. As a matter of fact, I will tell you, we've been trying to get a site in Australia. We've been really trying. We were talking to a few facilities and then they kind of like dropped out. And we were just talking about Australia the other day, saying we've got to reach back out. We're in 35 countries.
Wow.
Growing.
One of the ways that you can support the birth time movement is to invest in some birth time merchandise. Getting the merch out there helps build brand awareness and encourages people to watch the film. It also kickstarts much needed conversations within our communities. We have a bag, a book, keep cup, and organic and sustainably sourced hoodies and t-shirts. Head to birthtime.world to find out more.
Can I ask a question about your doula training?
Yes,
What do you?
please, Zoe.
Yeah, I'd love to know. Like, so I understand they're in Bali, and you've got 2 tiers of doula training. What is it that makes your doula training stand out, or what would you say to any woman or person wanting to become a doula if they were considering studying with you?
Oh, I appreciate that. And I do want to say there are so many wonderful doula trainings, right? There are many fantastic people. But what's special is that this training in Bali, I co-teach with Midwife Robin Lim. And if you've had a chance to meet Robin Lim, she is just an incredible midwife, and her wealth of wisdom and experience and stories is incredible. And I've been teaching doulas for 30 years in about 60 different countries. So Robin and I have this wonderful collaboration, and we can really help doulas come in and see like this huge variety of what's possible. The other thing that I love about Bali is Robin's birth center is there, one of them. She has 6 different facilities, but you get a chance to really see an optimal model of care. The Bumi Sehat Birth Center, I always say I've arrived in birth heaven when I go there. It's like, wow, it's really what I wish everyone had the opportunity to give birth and be cared for prenatally and postpartum in this environment. So doulas that come in have an opportunity to see all that, learn from us, and it's 8 days living together. Robin has this beautiful facility called Peace Kitchen. And it's one thing to go to a doula workshop where you go from 9 to 5. At the end of the day, you rush home, make dinner, take care of kids. You're already by halfway in the afternoon thinking about what you're doing for dinner. When you have 8 days to just come and live with us and live with other doulas, we get to really talk birth, be together. And for a lot of people, it's a real healing opportunity because so many of us have things that we need to address to heal before we can really work with other people. So our workshop is really a time to nurture yourself, kind of totally step out and immerse into this amazing community of people that have come together, and have Robin and I nurture and guide you and tell you a lot of stories and also give you many, many skills. So by the time you leave, you feel absolutely confident to go to your first birth and support someone.
And would it be something that an already established doula can come along to? Is that also an offering?
It is. We've had doula trainers come because even if you're an experienced doula and you took a different workshop, every workshop is unique and different, right? Every trainer is bringing their unique gifts and wisdom to it. So we have many people. We have midwives. I'm doing a training right now. I have 2 OBs in it. So, I mean, doula training is really a wonderful way. If you're beginning, it can be your first entry into providing care to people that are pregnant, but it also can be a great workshop for expanding what you're already offering.
Amazing.
Wouldn't it be great to go film the birth?
Yes.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Oh,
Maybe
Zoe.
that's
Now you're talking.
Yeah, we love an adventure.
maybe en route to America.
Oh, when we
Come to Bali this
I've never
March.
been.
No.
Work trip.
I've been a doula for 18 years and I want to come to Bali this
I know.
March.
I feel
I'd
like
like
doing
to
that
come to
training.
Bali, but I'm fully booked with births until August.
Oh,
How often
dear.
with them, Deborah?
We do it every year. So every year we do both the doula workshop, again, which we get experienced doulas and advanced providers too that want to add doula skills to their bag. We do a lot with comfort. We have a lot of fun tricks. But we also do an advanced retreat. That's sold out this year. That usually opens up and sells out like this. And that's really for very experienced providers. So we get a lot of midwives, experienced doulas, nurses, PTs, and others. So every year, it's typically March, April. I'm not sure for 2026 when it'll be, but those of you free in March, Jerusha and Zoe, come. If you haven't filmed Robin, I just want to say, like, her birth center, it's birth
I've been
heaven.
there. It's amazing. Yeah, I went a few years ago. It's absolutely amazing. She's an incredible woman. And Rue, you met her last year at the Home Birth
I
Conference,
was
didn't
saying
you?
to Deborah earlier, yeah, she was at the home birth conference and I was just blown away by her. I'd wanted to meet her for so long, but I was still amazed by her presence and her stories and her wisdom. She's an incredible human.
She really is. And the whole team she's put together, right? She has this incredible staff there. And to really be there and just see the care that every person that comes in is just greeted with such kindness and love and reverence, right? And the care that they receive from their first meeting through their postpartum. It's just amazing. And we all can learn from it.
So is there still tickets available for the March retreat?
Yes, for the birth doula, there are a couple places left, and we'd love to have anyone join us that's listening at eatpraydoula.com. You can find out more information there.
We'll put those details in our show notes as well, Deborah.
Yeah, along with the what was the childbirth initiative and anything else?
We'll go and give our hospitals a nudge over here. Get Australia on your map.
Yes, definitely, because there's no reason why you don't. And all you need is one, and then they become a model because they start doing such good care. More people want to go there, and hopefully they can be a model for others. So it is the International Childbirth Initiative, and the website is icicildbirth.org.
And who do you normally speak to about that? Would it be the head of midwifery, the general manager of the hospital, the head of obstetrics? Like, how do people come about joining?
I mean, whoever, it could enter at any point. So whoever is willing to say, you know, I think our facility needs this, and they're willing to be bold and bring it to the other colleagues and other levels, because all you need to do is get a couple people that are curious, and we'll do virtual presentations. So if you can get a few of your providers together, our team will do a presentation, really educate them about it and the process, and then we'll take it from there. So
Amazing.
yeah, if anyone listening is a nurse, a midwife, you work within a facility, a doula who knows people, each one of you can make a difference by bringing this to someone.
Amazing. That's so good. Well, definitely, I've got a few people in mind, so
we know some people. We know some people.
A few people.
You happen to.
Yeah. I tell you what's funny. Yeah, right. It really early in sometime along our filming, we had a midwife say to us, I've got an idea for you. We've got the mother-baby friendly hospitals. but I've got an idea about what if we had a standard of care that was birth time friendly hospitals, that were meeting the standard of care. You've done it, Debra. We don't need to do it. So we'll just back yours and we'll get it into our hospitals. It's such a great initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerusha. Yeah, and it's an initiative that we all can stand with, right? And what I love is it's all about collaboration. The more we come together, the more we get stronger and can make this change happen. And it's time, as you say.
It's time.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Now, we're not going to ask you our last question because we asked you in the film and you summed it up so beautifully in the film. So for those of you that want to hear what Debra's got to say, go and watch Birth Time. But, you've been doing this work for such a long time, Debra. I mean, really, your whole working life has been about birth. Can you share with us one of the most transformative or memorable experiences that you've had doing this work?
Ooh, that's a great question because there have been so many amazing moments. I mean, right now, my transformative moments are watching sites around the world that really have no money, but have such big will and are making change, because the change that we're talking about is not dollar driven, right? It's why Robin Lim's work is so precious in a very low resource region. This is about love and connection and heart. And so every time I see someone who just is dedicated to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to make this change, it just makes me feel all this struggle all these years, so many times hitting walls, right, is so worth it as I see it melt. But I will tell you one thing really recently that makes me just giggle. So when people watch our film, and I know you do this too, they get a follow-up email. And we ask them what they thought and how they're feeling. And some people write us very funny things. But this one person wrote back and said, well, I'm the head of obstetrics at a very big hospital, and I want to talk with you because we need to make change after watching your film. So at first I kind of thought, is this one of my friends fooling around? And this isn't real, right? Really is the head of obstetrics of one of our big New York City hospitals wanting to change? Well, I've been journeying with her, and she has this brilliant idea right now that she's starting where their childbirth classes to get more people in. Because remember, we talked about education is key. People from the community need to come in to learn and have their voices heard and be able to learn about different practices. They're going to do dance lessons every week and partner education with a different type of dance and a different type of food. And since she watched the film, they've changed their policies. There's no more denying food and drink. They brought in birth balls, peanut balls, cubs. People are upright and moving. They have doulas, and they are changing their practices. So when I get I can't believe it, I'm like, wow, here's someone random. And that was 6 months ago. And we're on a journey now. And it's funny, you're saying we have to go film all these things. Someone said to me yesterday, Debra, you should go film what she's doing there, because it's an amazing hospital to be changing. So that's on the bigger level. But I'll tell you my fun story that changed me on a personal level is after Orgasmic Birth came out, someone said to me, Debra, I want you to be my doula. I want you to be my orgasmic doula. And I was like, what do you mean by that? What are you expecting from an orgasmic doula, right? And I just want to be real clear here. And she said, no, I'll take care of everything, but I want you to feel safe and comfortable to be my doula. And I was like, I'm safe and comfortable with anybody. So I met with her. And we're at the prenatal visit with the midwife. She's planning a home birth. It's 37 weeks. And we ask her those open-ended questions, is there anything else you'd like us to know to support you? And I'll never forget, because she said, well, I'd be making a lot of sounds in labor. And, as midwives and doulas, right? We always go, we love sounds. The more sounds, the better. No, my sounds will be different. Oh, I said, everybody's is unique. And I just love everyone's variety. No, you've never heard mine. And I remember like pausing for a minute and I'm like stumped now. I'm like, what does she think? I said, well, why don't you try to make the sound and that way we can hear it now? And she said, okay. She was kind of happy finally with that. And she went, And I was like, she said, come over here. She opened her drawer. Her friends threw her a vibrator party. They wanted to make sure she'd have an orgasmic birth. She had more vibrators than any store around. It was like, phenomenal. And I went, why didn't I think about that? How I wished I had thought about a vibrator when I was pregnant all those years ago. Why didn't my great grandmother tell me that? So that was one of my fun aha moments. And boy, did she have an orgasmic birth. Oh my goodness. She really, when she had clitoral pressure, she had pleasure. When she didn't, she had pain. She knew exactly how to ride those waves. It was really, the midwife and I were a little embarrassed and a little sweaty at times. And this is, even for us.
There's an opportunity for some sort of marketing ploy. Orgasmic birth vibrator.
We're in it right now. We're actually working on it. We're months away from releasing a branded orgasmic birth. We've done a lot of research to find the one that will be safe and pleasurable for birth.
That's fun research, Debra.
Fantastic. We'll have to add it to
pleasure research. I always say we do a lot of pleasure research. It's fantastic.
Love it. I love it.
Good on you,
It's
Debra.
just been fabulous, Debra. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Debra.
Thank you for forging the way. I think, especially from us on the film front, bringing birth into film, you really were quite a pioneer in that front. You and Ricky Lake around a similar time. There's obviously been other films made, but they were such pinnacles of inspiration for us in just blowing the lid off what is possible and what we show and what we bring to society to try and change the vision and the belief of what birth is and what birth can be. So we are so grateful for your work in that space.
Thank you. I really am honored, but I am super grateful for you because you are taking it to a whole nother level. And I am waiting in New York for you. We're ready to bring you into the US and have some big events here. So I'm going to be waiting. And Bali first. I think come to Bali in March and then we'll plan the US shortly after.
And that's a wrap. You can check out the show notes to find websites, books, research articles, social media handles, and general information about each of our podcast guests. Thank you to our fabulous birth time sisters, Zoe Naylor and Selena Scoble, for supporting the creation of this podcast behind the scenes. If you're enjoying the show, please take a moment to follow or subscribe to Birth Time the podcast. Leave us a review and a rating, and please, we'd really love it if you'd share it amongst your friends and networks. You can also find us on Facebook and Instagram at Birthtime World, and our website birthtime.world, where you can also stream and watch our international award-winning film, Birthtime the Documentary. You can find out more about me, Jo Hunter, and my midwifery work at midwifejo.com.au, and more about Jerusha Sutton and her gorgeous photography and doula work at jerusha.com.au. And thank you to you, our beautiful Birth Time family, for tuning in to Birth Time the podcast. We really do appreciate you all so, so much. Until next time.